Good morning, Sangha. I want to start by saying thank you to Bethany, who is our tech person today, who without, we could not do any of this. We'd all be sitting here alone in the temple. We will, and all the issues with, you all know how by this time, if you want to mute yourself or, hide your photo or something, you all know what to do. I don't even know the words, but everybody else knows what to do. We'll start with the Three Refuges. I go for refuge to Buddha, my deeply awakened mind, the living source of understanding and compassion, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to Dharma, the path of mindful living, leading to healing, joy, and enlightenment, the way of peace, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the living source of and supportive community of practice, realizing harmony, awareness, and liberation, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I am aware that the three jewels are within my heart. I vow to realize them. I vow to understand living beings and their suffering. I vow to cultivate loving kindness and compassion and to practice joy and equanimity. I vow to live simply and sanely, content with few possessions, and to keep my body healthy. I vow to let go of all worry and anxiety in order to be light and free. I am aware that I owe so much to my parents, teachers, friends, and all beings. I vow to be worthy of their trust, to practice wholeheartedly, so that understanding and compassion will flower, and I can help all beings be free from their suffering. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. And the Heart Sutra. The Maha Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra, the Bodhisattva of great compassion from the deep practice of Prajna Paramita, perceived the emptiness of all five skandhas and delivered all beings from their suffering. O Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. Form is emptiness, emptiness form. The same is true of feeling, thought, impulse, and consciousness. O Shariputra, all dharmas are empty. They are not born nor annihilated. They are not defiled nor immaculate. They do not increase nor decrease. So in emptiness, no form, no feeling, no thought, no impulse, no consciousness, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or objects of mind, no realm of sight, no realm of consciousness, no ignorance, nor extinction of ignorance, no old age and death, nor extinction of them, no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cease from suffering, no path to lead out of suffering, no knowledge, no attainment, no realization, for there is nothing to attain. The Bodhisattva holds on to nothing but prajna, paramita. Therefore the mind is clear of any delusive hindrance. Without hindrance there is no fear. Away from all perverted views, one reaches final nirvana. All Buddhas of past, present, and future, through faith in prajna, paramita, attain to the highest perfect enlightenment. Know then the prajna, paramita, is the great Dharani, the radiant peerless mantram, the utmost supreme mantram, which is capable of allaying all pain. This is true beyond all doubt. Proclaim now the highest wisdom, the prajna, paramita, gate, gate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha, gate, gate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha, gate, gate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. The Maha Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. Good morning again. Siddhartha Gautama, after he had left his family, his home, his wealth, spent a number of years with different meditation teachers. He was looking for an answer to the problems of the world, the problems he saw in everyone's life, in everyday activities, in everyday existence. He spent years with different teachers, and he excelled in the learning about meditation. He reached a point with each one of those teachers when they asked him to become a co-teacher, and he declined. He understood that through the act of meditation, he was simply stepping away temporarily from the issues he was trying to resolve. But when he returned from meditation, when he got up off the cushion, all these situations, all these problems were still here. There was, and still is in some parts of the world, in some traditions, an idea that our body gets in our way. Our body wants comfort. Our body wants to be warm. It wants to be fed. It wants pleasure. It wants enjoyment. So many people believed if they could get control of their body, they could perhaps find the answers they were looking for, enlightenment, or in some cases, union with the divine. So Siddhartha Gautama began a 6-year practice of asceticism. He ate very little food. He deprived himself of sleep. He would sit next to a bonfire in the heat of the day. He tried to get his body under control because of that belief that if the body's controlled, then the spirit is controlled. He became such an extreme ascetic that people came and admired him. He eventually collected a group of 5 men who practiced with him. He said that he was living on 1 bean or 1 grain of rice a day. It got to the point where he could no longer go out and beg. He was just too weak. And there came a day when the other 5 ascetics went off to do the begging for the meager food they had. And Siddhartha was left behind, and he decided he had to bathe himself. So he got up to head towards the river to bathe, and he collapsed. He was essentially starving to death. And a person came along. Her name was Sujata. Some people say she was the wife of a farmer. Others say she was the daughter of a farmer. She was, whoever she was, whatever she was bringing a bowl of rice gruel, rice pudding, to a local shrine. She saw Siddhartha lying there, and she saw and understood what was happening. So she stopped, knelt beside him, and gave him the gruel. She fed it to him. And there were enough calories in that gruel, which was probably rice, milk, and honey. Still a very common dish in India today. There was enough calories there to get his brain functioning properly again, to get his mind working properly. And just at that moment, his 5 fellow ascetics returned, and they saw him there being fed this rice gruel by this girl, and they were outraged. He had left the true path. He had left the path of asceticism, letting a beautiful woman touch him and eating luxurious food. So they left in disgust. Anyway, he thanked Sujata, and then he continued down to the river and was bathing and bathed himself. While he was bathing, he came to a few realizations. He thought about what had just been happening. Now, there is a story that says while he was bathing, a flatboat drifted down the river. And on that flatboat was a man and his 2 daughters. Now, whether this is a true event or it was a teaching device added later, I don't think matters. It does help us understand to what came to the Buddha's mind right there. The story tells us that this father was explaining to his daughters, he was teaching them how to play the sitar, and he was teaching them how to tune it. And he said, if you get the strings too tight, twang, you'll have that twingy sound. If they're not tight enough, you'll get no sound. They have to be in the middle. And that dawned on them, that awoke something in Siddhartha. He had gone from a life with his family of extreme, what do I want to say, pleasure. He had anything he wanted. He had any foods, any clothes, anything he wanted. And he had gone from that to almost starving to death. And he realized neither one of these gave him the answers he wanted. Here. So he came up out of the river, dried himself, grabbed a bundle of grass, set them under a tree, and sat down and began meditating on what he had just realized, on his past life, on everything that had happened. And of course, we know the story. When he again stood, he was no longer Siddhartha. He was now the Buddha, the awakened one. And he had discovered what he was looking for. And he went off to share it. And the first people he shared it with were the 5 ascetics who had left him. He found them in Deer Park. And I'm going to take a little aside here. You will see many times in, especially Theravadan Buddhism, a Dharma wheel with a deer, a buck, and a doe on each side. And they're usually crouching, lying, I don't know what that phrase is, but they're not standing, they're down on their haunches, on their stomachs, on either side of the Dharma wheel. And that symbol usually just signifies Buddhist teaching. This is at a lot of schools, but it's one of my favorite symbols in Buddhism because it represents this day in the Buddha's life, in that at the Deer Park, he gave his very first teaching. And that first teaching is recorded in the Samyutta Nikaya, the Dhammacakka Sutta. And I'm going to share some of that with you. The Buddha came to these former practitioners with him, these ascetics. And when they saw him coming, they said, "Here comes that slacker. We're not going to stand and greet him. We won't be rude, but we're not going to, bow to him or anything." But as they got closer, they could see something was different. And they did exactly what they said they weren't going to do. They got up and got him a cushion to sit on. They got water to wash his feet. And this, in the Samyutta Nikaya, chapter 56, subchapter 11, which is the Dhammacakka Sutta, the Buddha, he was now the Buddha, explained to these former ascetics, or these former companions, I should say, what he had just discovered. And these are the Buddha's own words. He said he had come to understand the noble truth of dukkha. I'm going to use that word because everyone translates it differently. I think Young Su said you prefer the word suffering. My teacher always used the word stress and anxiety. There are other people who like the word dis-ease. You're uncomfortable. You're worried. I like the words anxiety and stress because for me, they explain it well. But the Buddha said that there is this noble truth of suffering. He said birth is suffering, or dukkha. I apologize. I was going to use dukkha. And if you have ever given birth or been around someone giving birth, you know this is not a pleasant experience usually. And for the child, it's not a pleasant experience. Coming out of that warm, wet, dark, safe place into the cold, white world. But the Buddha said birth is dukkha, aging is dukkha, illness is dukkha, death is dukkha, union with what is displeasing is dukkha, separation from what is pleasing is dukkha, not to get what one wants is dukkha. This is the beginning of understanding that there is dukkha in our lives. The Buddha then told these ascetics that there is an origin to dukkha. And it is craving or thirst. There is a desire for only pleasure, a desire for no non-pleasure, a craving for sensuality. And when I mean sensuality, we usually think of sex, but sensuality is any experience by any of your senses. Pleasant sounds, pleasant sights, things that make us feel good. We crave for these, and we thirst for them, we hunger for them, and we hunger not to have their opposites. We want the good. We don't want the non-good. He went on to tell them, there is the noble truth of the cessation of dukkha. It is the remainderless fading away and cessation of this same craving. And I like the fact that he used fading away. I can't push away my craving. I can't push away what I want or what I don't want. Through the practice that the Buddha gave us, I can learn to let it drop away, not to feed it anymore, not to hold on to it anymore. And I use the word practice and I underline it because that's what it is. It's a practice to let this craving, this thirst, this hunger for good, to be away from the non-good, to let this just fall away. And finally, he said, monks, there is a way leading to this cessation of dukkha. There is a path of practice. And that is the path of the Noble Eightfold Path, he called it. Right intention, right view, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Now, I prefer to use a word other than right, because there's almost a judgment, a moral judgment on there. I like to think of the word perhaps proper or wholesome, or maybe the metaphor of making a pie or a cake. There is a right way, a correct way to make a cake, and there is an incorrect way. If you do things incorrectly, the cake won't turn out. If you do them properly, it will turn out. So to have a proper view of the teaching, a proper view of the Four Noble Truths, which the Buddha just gave, that there is dukkha, that there is a reason, a cause for dukkha, that there is freedom from dukkha, and that there is a path to follow to experience this dukkha. That is the proper way to make a cake. If I'm going to an interfaith seminar at Calvin College next month, and one of the things always asked at these interfaith gatherings by people who have no experience with Buddhism is what is Buddhism? And this is one of my default answers. To understand Buddhism, understand the Noble Eightfold Path. The path is both a path to get to an understanding, to a fading away of dukkha, and it's also the goal. Because I cannot live this path perfectly when I first begin the practice. The path is a practice in and of itself. to try to work to experience proper, correct, wholesome thought, wholesome view, wholesome understanding. And that one there, understanding. If we can understand the Four Noble Truths, if we can understand that there is dukkha, where it comes from, that is the beginning of freedom. That is the beginning of the fading away of everything that holds us down, holds us back from realizing what the Buddha himself realized under that tree on that night. There is no way that I can stop unhappy things, sometimes terrible things, from happening around me or to those that I know and love. What I am capable of doing is responding in a wholesome manner. Part of the Buddha's teaching, other than the Four Noble Truths, is the teaching on impermanence, the teaching on interconnectedness, the teaching on codependent origination. I think if we have those teachings, the Four Noble Truths, of which the Eightfold Path is the fourth truth, and an understanding of impermanence, an understanding of dependent co-arising, an understanding of cause and effect. That is the foundation of our practice. That is the foundation of our teaching. And the Buddha spent the rest of his life teaching this over and over and over and over again. I have been a Buddhist practitioner for going on 20 years now. And I daily remind myself of these teachings. I'm not thrilled with impermanence, but it is a reality. Those things we love cease. Those people we love cease. We each will cease someday. If we can hang on to these teachings, I don't like that word, I apologize. Hanging on is another form of dukkha. If we can live our lives informed by the Buddha's teaching, I think in the end it will help us each to become clearer and freer, and it may even permeate into those around us. If someone can see our way of experiencing both joy and non-joy, and that may help them when their own non-joy comes and their own joy. Equanimity is a foundational teaching of the Buddha also. To live with an even mind where neither joy nor sadness guides me, but I am guided by an understanding of reality. And I believe I will leave it there. Please prepare for meditation. We vow. Are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions? Pardon me? Oh, it's in the Samyutta Nikaya, and it's the Dhammacakka Sutta. Dhamacakka. I'm doing that all from memory. I think I got it right. It's a Pali form.
Tell them what page.
What page?
In the big book.
Oh, in the Samyutta Nikaya, it's on page 1843. But it's called Setting the Wheel of the Dharma in Motion. And I believe I did spell that right. It is the Pali form of Dharma, Dhamma, and Chakka, wheel, Cakka.
And then if you Google it, you'll find it.
Well, I'm positive you'll find it.
So one more thing. Setting the wheel. Just say it one more time. So
Setting the Wheel of Dharma in Motion. Well, let me see if I spelled that right. Dhamacakka Sutta. All right. Anything else? Okay. Do you have any announcements? I don't think we have any announcements. I think we are ready to go. We will recite our closing gathas, and then we will have our virtual tea. Is that the way it says? Okay. For all unskillful actions ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thoughts, now I atone for them all. Vast is the robe of compassion, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Buddhist teachings for the benefit of all sentient beings. All beings, one body, I vow to liberate. Endless blind passions, I vow to uproot. Dharma gates without number, I vow to penetrate. The great way of the Buddha, I vow to attain. And I would like to explain real quick in the Bodhisattva vows, the third vow, Dharma gates without number, I vow to penetrate. A Dharma gate is any practice or teaching of the Buddha that helps us come to a realization and understanding and experience of the truth. Now, there was a time in this temple when these three closing gathas, do you remember this, Young Su? We would recite each one 3 times. It got to be a bit long, and some people were unhappy with it, but in Buddhism, we do a lot of things like that in groups of 3. And the idea behind that is that one of those 3 times that we're reciting something, it may stick to us. We may be paying attention because so often when we recite something by rote, it's just coming out. That's why I have these memorized, but I look at them so that I'm aware of what I am saying. And that helps me make it part of me. So with that, I will wish you a good day. Well, I'll see you in the tea in a few moments.